as printed in the Marshall Bill.
My Lords, I rise strongly to support my noble friend Lord Banner in this amendment about proportionality. And my experience on this comes from a membership of the Sill Review. I was appointed by the Minister about 10 years ago now to have a new approach, to imagine the new approach to developer contributions. I don't have the report in front of me, it was a long time ago, but there was one statistic as part of our evidence gathering process that remains with me today. And it was that 90% of all planning applications are for 10 dwellings or less, but the 10% which are for 11 or more are well over half the total number of houses that are planned to be built in this country. There's an asymmetry, and the larger ones are significantly more, the larger applications are significantly larger than the smaller. Yet we treat everything the same. And if we're to encourage local builders who spend much time with local vernacular and local contractors and local supply chains, we must have a more flexible and proportionate system. Now, proportionality exists in so many walks of life. If I just reflect for a few moments on some of the bills we've been looking at in the last few months, there's proportionality for small businesses in employment legislation. The noble Baroness, the Minister and I debated in the Moses Room the other day the definition of a smaller authority with a different test, a different audit test that would happen to those small authorities with a turnover of £15 million or less. In the brewing industry, the smaller brewers have an advantageous duty regime. So proportionality should not be alien. In fact, it should be something to be encouraged. As part of the Sill Review work, we looked at how we might help smaller builders, and we postulated that developments less than 10 dwellings, as a sort of a threshold, would be exempted from Section 106. They would pay Sill, the Community Infrastructure Levy, instead. And I thought that, well, that was a really proportionate way of doing it. People would make a meaningful contribution to the local infrastructure, but they wouldn't have to get tied up in knots on some of the smaller minutiae. And I think that's an approach which we could follow. Of course, in local authorities, there's when you apply for planning permission, there's a validation exercise. Unless you have submitted your ecology assessment, your Sill form and everything else, the clock doesn't even start ticking. And I wouldn't want, and I'm sure my noble friend wouldn't want this to be the case, that the whole areas of legislation would be sort of cast aside. I don't think he's suggesting for a moment that there would be no ecology report. It's just that, clearly, an ecology report for a set of 5 bungalows in a village on the outskirts of the development boundary shouldn't be subject to the same test as a much more significant one. And that's important, because it is significantly more expensive to deliver smaller schemes. There are certain fixed costs of applying for a planning application that have to be amortised or jam spread, if you will, over a small number of developments. And there is a diseconomy of scale. I've done some fag paper arithmetic. It's about £40,000 more per dwelling house when you take in some of these extra burdens of a smaller scale development over a larger one. And of course, that's why we haven't got the affordable housing that detained us in the bill on, well, I can't remember if it was Tuesday night or Wednesday morning. Tuesday. So I think we just need to drag out this simple truth, that smaller schemes are more expensive, and that affects viability, and viability is a significant challenge to getting Britain building. If only we could have this proportionate effect and make a virtue of it, we'd have more choice to the market, with speed delivery, and would increase liquidity and the local supply chains and local economies that would all make us richer and play a significant part to getting Britain building and the economy growing. Yeah.